of flashback.
No matter how many hours I've logged, Takeoff still puts a smile on my face. Taking off is not especially difficult, if you remember a few basic principles. First, whenever possible, take off into the wind. This won't be an issue on a calm day like today. Second, before you enter a runway, always make sure it's clear. All right, no cross traffic to contend with. You're clear to taxi. Use your rudder pedals to steer the aircraft into position. All right, you're clear for takeoff. Apply full power, and I'll step you through the process. Try to stay on the center line using your rudder. Continue pushing power until you reach 55 knots. Good. Now pull back gently on the yoke. Align the top of your instrument panel a couple inches above the horizon. Pitch up and set a good climb attitude. That's it. You're airborne. Focus on flying straight. Use your rudder to keep the runway heading of 210 degrees. If you maintain 75 knots, you'll reach the target altitude of 5,500 feet in no time. You've reached your target altitude, you're ready for part 2 of our lesson. Straight and level flight. Step 1, adjusting your attitude. The aircraft is currently in a cruise attitude. You're pushing max power. To stay level, you'll want to ease back the throttle to, say, 1,800 RPMs. As you may have noticed, to hold this altitude, you need to pitch the nose up. You could maintain pressure on the yoke to hold steady. However, that's not exactly a precise method of control. The optimal approach is to adjust your trim wheel until you no longer need to push or pull on the yoke. Drag the trim down when you need to set the nose up. Drag it up to set the nose down. Add trim to keep the aircraft at 5,500 feet without increasing throttle. If you feel your pitch slipping and need to get back to the proper attitude, just pull on the yoke, then dial in the right trim. My experience, when you adjust the trim, you want to make initial rough changes to remove pressure on the yoke. After that, you make small adjustments to find the perfect setting to keep your desired attitude. Understanding trim is fundamental to straight and level flight. It saves you from applying constant pressure on the yoke, which frees you up to focus on other joys of flying. Take as much time as you like practicing with the trim. I'll be here when you're ready to pass the controls. I have control now. Check. My old flight commander used to say, what goes up must come down. Ideally in one piece. For this lesson, you will be called on to bring us in for a safe landing. We have clearance for a straight-in approach. No need to complete the standard traffic pattern. You're already set up in landing configuration at 65 knots with 10 degrees of flaps and idle power. You're on the glide slope now. Maintain a speed of 65 knots, adjust your pitch if necessary, and keep your aim point on the runway number. When you're targeting the runway number, keep it steady in your sights. If the number appears to move up in your windscreen, you're coming in low. You'll need to add more throttle to get back on the slope. If the number's moving down, you're coming in high. You'll need to add flaps to increase your rate of descent. You'll also need to push forward and trim to change your attitude and maintain the same speed. Keep your aim point on the runway threshold. When you're 10 feet above the runway, it's time to flare. As you pass the threshold, shift your aim point to the end of the runway. Then you'll pull back slightly on the yoke and aim the nose just above it. All right, you've passed the threshold. Start your flare. Keep pulling back slowly and allow the aircraft to settle on the runway. Don't push it down, but don't let it start climbing either. There you go. Now, apply the brakes to slow down and bring the aircraft to a stop. Well done. Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. But when you can use the aircraft the next day, it's fantastic. Landing can be a challenge, even for veteran pilots. It takes practice to master. Luckily, that's why we're here. If you're a pilot who plans to visit an airport anytime soon, you'll need to understand the notion of traffic patterns. Sedona's standard traffic pattern follows a 1,000-foot altitude around the main runway. By the time you finish this lesson, you'll have the skills to complete every leg of the pattern, starting with takeoff. Once you're airborne, stay aligned with the runway and climb to 5,400 feet. You'll be going for a left-hand traffic pattern. When you reach your target altitude, begin a turn to the left 90 degrees toward a 122-degree heading. Now you're in the pattern. Get ready for the crosswind section. All right. Continue climbing until you reach the traffic pattern altitude of 5,700 feet. It's time to make your left turn downwind. When the runway appears at the halfway point of your wing strut, that's your mark. You're at a good glide distance. Good. You're in the downwind leg. Now lower your nose to a cruise attitude and reduce power to 2,100 RPMs. Once your speed is in the white arc, add 10 degrees of flaps and prepare for landing. This would be a good time to check and see if the runway's looking good. Also watch out for any other aircraft entering or exiting the pattern. As you fly past the end of the runway, continue until you see it at a 45-degree angle behind you. That's your cue to turn left again, onto the base leg. Now reduce your power to idle. You want to lose altitude while you maintain a cruise attitude. Keep an eye on the runway as you prepare for your final turn. Your speed should be holding at approximately 65 knots. See that? The runway's in full view. Be sure to keep the aircraft centered on approach. If you're too high, add flaps. Too low, add power to maintain the glide path. All right, we are wheels down. Apply brakes to slow the aircraft, but never come to a complete stop on the runway. If other aircraft are looking to land, you'll have to move. Proceed to one of the taxiways on the right. You did well. You're on your way to becoming a solid pilot. Keep it up.